A very good afternoon to one and everyone who are live with us. Thank you so much again for taking the time to join in today's workshop series. My name is Sid and I'm going to be a presenter for today's session. Before we get started, our agenda is going to be on OU/role-based AD delegation and the business workflow for AD operations. And before we dive into today's topic, we're going to do a quick recap on the workshop series that were being held for the past previous weeks. So this is going to be the third workshop of the series that have been designed for all our admins who've been using ADManager and for those who haven't had a chance to explore the software. With that said, here are the core features that we had discussed in the first 2 weeks. We had learned in the workshop series 1 how you can design your template with the help of a CSV and how you can start provisioning user accounts with simple and quite effectively using the user creation templates. We had also learned how you can provision AD attributes, the Exchange, and Office 365 provisioning all within one single window without having the necessity to use multiple interfaces. And the workshop series 2 organized on how we can identify and free up licenses for the inactive Office 365 accounts. So which means you've got an efficient way to clean up your Office 365 usage and ensure that you've got sufficient numbers to move on. And we've also learned how you can use the much awaited feature, the user modification templates, where you can use rule-based criteria. For instance, if I move into a different department, I would have the necessary attributes being associated to me or being modified. For example, you get into finance and the finance-based groups will be assigned to you. That's user modification template. And of course, the final pieces would be in terms of the exchange management. So we had learned how to disable and archive Exchange mailboxes, and we had also learned how to migrate Exchange mailboxes from one lower version to another. That's our quick recap on the first 2 workshop series. And in the chat, I've mentioned the link ADMP Solutions, ADMP workshop, the resources where you can get information on the past videos too. And the topics that we would be discussing today are more focused towards workflow and AD delegation. So this is going to be our core agenda in this workshop. So we are going to focus on how exactly you can enforce an attribute level restriction for a technician based upon your organization policies. We will also learn how you can delegate your tasks to HRs or to your geographical location managers so that you can ease the task of your administrators and subordinates. And we're also going to learn how you can restrict an admin based on a specific OU, whether he's got access, whether or he shouldn't have access to a specific location. And the last 3 tasks over here are defined on workflow system. So you can define a business workflow in which you can define the order of execution based on a requestor, executor, and other specific roles which can be designed to cater your AD needs. With that said, let me now quickly take you to the product over here. Now for those who don't have a test installation of ADManager, we have the details put forward to you in the chat. So you can get into admp.cloudapp.net and you can use the username ADMP, and the password is going to be workshop with W capitalized, and the logon to is going to be the ADManager Plus authentication. And for those who've got the ADManager Plus installed, I'm sure this would be the best way what we are going to do these tasks practically. With that said, I'm just going to quickly log in into ADManager and we're going to kickstart with the first tasks over here. We're starting with delegating. Now every once in a while you will have to delegate certain roles to your technicians, and when I go with native Active Directory, I'll have to get into the Active Directory users and computers where I will have to delegate a specific role for my technician to perform certain operations, which means I will have to go through the pain of getting into native AD to do these tasks. But instead, ADManager is giving you the most easiest way to perform this. And this is how we're going to learn today. So, coming up with the first task, how exactly are we going to customize a role when you see this comparison with native AD? So I'm going to get into the AD delegation tab, and towards my left hand pane, I've got the help desk roles over here. So I'm going to define a role which could be, associated to my technicians with respect to, let's say, a help desk technician over here. So I'm going to name this role as a help desk IT. Now, let's just keep comparing with native AD and how ADManager Plus is going to make a difference over here. So when you go on with native AD, it is quite, it is time consuming, of course, and you will have to, get into each and every attribute with various other properties. It's not simple again. But with ADManager, here you go. So for instance, if I need to ensure that this technician over here should have the option to perform password reset, but at the same time, I need to ensure that this account over here should not have access to multiple flags. For instance, user can't change password. I can have that unchecked. The user must change password next logon. I can also have that unchecked. And most importantly, password never expires. Definitely unchecked. So I can ensure that the user account, the technician over here, should be able to input the password for the user he's going to perform a reset by providing a password, as in to type a password over here, and all the other operations over here are being unchecked. And then of course I would like to have this technician unlock accounts and also the option to enable and disable accounts as well. With that said, this is going to be my AD technician over here, and I'm now going to have this role associated for the technician itself. So after I have saved this role as helpdesk IT, I will just get back to helpdesk technicians on the left hand pane, and I am going to assign this role to one of my technicians. So I would go back and associate the inbuilt helpdesk technician over here and choose a role which we had just created. We click on OK, and then we click on Save Changes. Now I'm going to show you how the user interface is going to be for the technician over here. So we're going to log out and now sign in as the help desk associate. So here you go. This is the most efficient way of analyzing or giving the best way to have your technicians use ADManager. So for instance, if they need to modify an account, they would just get into modify single user. And do notice, the only options what I would be able to perform, of course, is the password, and in case the account is being logged out, I'll have that unlocked, or I can have the accounts disabled. Now you might have a question, hey, now this is fine because I am able to delegate these roles to my technicians. How about restricting them to certain principles over here? Well, that's going to be our task number 2. I'm going to show you how exactly are we going to define the role of this helpdesk technician by restricting him to a certain OU and to other few features which you might be really happy with. So let me log in back as the admin. And I'm now getting back into AD delegation over here, and I'm going to show you certain features which makes a difference for these accounts over here. For instance, when you get into the help desk options over here, there are 2 key features if you could notice. One, the impersonation as an admin, of course. So what happens over here is this account, the help desk, this is going to use the account which is configured in the domain settings of ADManager. So let us say, for example, if the helpdesk account is an AD user in my environment and he's just part of domain users, if I have the option impersonate as an admin being checked, it's going to impersonate as this proxy account being used over here. So you might wonder, alright, so if that's going to be the case, what about the events that are recorded in the security logs? Yes, no doubt it is going to point to the proxy user which has been defined in the domain settings, But to ensure that, to find out all the changes that have been done by this technician over here, I've got the advanced audit reports over here. So when I get into the audit reports in the left hand pane, it's going to show me each and every task that have been performed by the technician. So for instance, if I made a modification, or if I've deleted an object or performed any operation using ADManager, yes, I will have them reported under the audit reports. And to let you know how exactly you can restrict these accounts based on geographical locations, well, let's say for example I've got Sid over here who is a technician, and if I modify Sid's account, now of course we will have OUs based on different locations. You might have one in the UK, you might have one in the US, the US, and you might also have another one in the Middle East. The best way is to ensure that you need to take complete control over these. So you can define which which OUs over here should be associated for these technicians. So for instance, I'm just going to choose only the US and UK, and all the other OUs are being unchecked. And the role I'm going to define over here is that of the helpdesk IT. And of course, I've also got the option where I can ensure that only these groups over here should be visible for the technician. So for instance, if I need to perform a modification, only these accounts over here, these groups over here will be visible for the technician when he's making a change. And similarly, if I need to exclude a certain group over here, for instance, I can add in the enterprise admins over here. So this will ensure the enterprise admins will not be visible for the technician when he is trying to perform a modification over here. So these are the few important things to be noticed when you try to delegate a technician. So let me quickly show you how exactly it's going to be displayed for the user itself. Let me just go ahead and add a few more OUs over here. And with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and save these changes. And a point to be noticed over here, once again, the roles what I have defined over here in ADManager, they are not going to get reflected in AD. So this is going to be completely safe. All these operations, what we define over here, is only valid within ADManager. The permissions will still be intact in AD itself. So for instance, if I'm a domain user and I have been impersonating as an admin, and if I log out, I'll still have the same permission what I had previously, that is only of a domain user. I will not be able to perform these operations once I log out of ADManager. So with that said, I will now have these changes saved and sign out and go back as the help desk. And here you can notice a difference. So when you get into modify single user, only the user accounts which have been associated, which OUs have been associated, only those will be visible. So this is one part of delegation what we had learned when delegating a certain user to a specific role over here. Now our next task is going to be how exactly we can define this role for a HR associate. That is right. You would have all thought that for once in a while, why exactly are the IT technicians over here are creating accounts? The HRs have the complete process in terms of onboarding. They have the complete details. And of course, they would need a simple user interface to create accounts instead, not make it complicated like AD itself. Well, no more. ADManager will make that task even more simpler for you. So for instance, let me just get into help desk roles over here and define a specific role for an HR associate. So I'm getting to create new role over here, and the options what I would like to ensure is that the HR should only have minimal selection when creating an account. So this is going to be the create users, the HR department. So once I've got the necessary information typed in, this role over here is going to ensure only user creation is going to be in place. So I can click on create single user and I can get into user attribute privileges over here, And let us say, for instance, if I need to ensure that my HR should not have access to any properties which there are no relationships with, for example, the terminal properties, I don't want that the HR to be modifying that, or the link, or even the other properties like the Office 365 and Google Apps and so on. But instead, what I would like to ensure is my HR should only be able to input the first name, the full name, and the last name. And of course, if possible, have the option to choose a template. Now, if you could remember, in our first workshop, we had learned how to create a template and define the fields before the user is about to get created. So I'm going to take that as an example, and I shall have this saved and then click on Save Role. So with that said, I will now have this role associated back to my help desk technician, which is the HR associate over here. And now I'm going to define the role that's going to be create users, and I will now have the changes saved. So let me do one thing real quick. Let me sign out and now log in as the HR associate. So ours was going to be completely in terms of user creation, and if I told you the HR should only be able to select just the first and last name and all the other attributes should be grayed out. Well, this is the one which is going to describe that. So I've got no options over here to type or to modify any other attributes except for the first and the last name over here. But if you can define the templates which has to be chosen for the HR, he will have them found over here. So for instance, if I need to create a help desk account, I can simply choose the help desk template over here, click on OK, and from my end, the only information what I will be providing is just the first name and the last name. All the other information will be populated in the template itself. So let's go with a different template over here. And what I would do is just the first name and the last name. So once again, just to give you a quick rewind over here, the template in ADManager is all about defining the structure of your user creation properties. So I can define which naming format should be set, in which container the user should be created for this specific template, and the group memberships that should be defined, and the other password and account properties too. So with that said, all I would do from my end is simply just click on create, and that account will get created based on the options what I provide over here. As simple as that. This is going to be the best way you can have this delegated to your HR associates. With that said, we had learned how exactly we can delegate roles to our subordinates. It could be your help desk technician, or it could even be your HR associate. ADManager is quite simple when it comes to delegation. So just to give you a quick recap on what we've done over here, we had learned how to make our own customized role, and after creating a role as per our business policies, it could be based on the user attribute privileges, the ones which you want to define, and the other bulk user modification properties, or anything when it comes to managing your AD organization. And once having the role saved, you can simply go ahead and assign that role to your technicians. So that's how effective ADManager Plus is in terms of delegation. With that said, let us now move into our second agenda, that's going to be the business workflow. So you might have a quick thought over here then and there like, alright, so I am going to give the permissions to my technicians, but I would like to ensure that I should still have the authority for the final call over here. So let's talk about HRs. Now, for instance, you would like to ensure the HR can fill in all the properties over here. I'm just not talking about the first name and last name, but even the group membership and other UAC properties too, or not just an HR, but any help desk associate over here. So for instance, I can choose a request our role over here. So before we get into request our roles, I'm going to show you what exactly the business workflow covers over here. So with the help of business workflow, you can define the level of execution based on the tasks that you would like to have them defined. So in a usual business workflow, you would have four different roles. You shall have the requestar who shall raise a request, and then a reviewer who will check out for the necessary information if the user should be created or what could be the possibilities once the user has been created and so on, which of course is weighing up the pros and cons over here. And then you've got the approver who will decide the authority of this action, and finally the executor who will approve that ticket. Now in most organizations I have consulted, they would probably go with just two roles quite efficiently, requestar and the executor. But in scenarios you will also have the option to use a reviewer role as well. So let's go with these three roles for now. And let us now associate our technicians to one of these roles. So let's go with request stars over here. So this is going to be the role who is going to create a ticket or who's going to raise a request over here. So I'm getting into add new request star, and what I shall do is I'm going to choose the account Sid to be the request star, and the role I would like to give Sid is to create user accounts, and I shall have them saved. And I would also perform other operations. For instance, let's go with group modification too. So we will come shortly on that. And the OUs, what I want to ensure that Sid should have access. Let's just go with all the OUs over here, or if I wish to, let me just go with a few of them. We shall just go with the US and the UK locations, and we shall have them selected and now have them saved. So I have now added a request star. So what I shall do now is, let me now have a reviewer. So I'll have the HR now who can go and review this request. And in terms of the executor, I'm going to have the admin account itself. So it's going to be a step-by-step process. Sid is going to be your help desk technician, and that request is going to be reviewed by your HR or your help desk instead. And then you will have the executor who is going to define or who is going to approve or have that request rejected. Hey, so with that said, I'll have this business workflow now being saved, and I can also define multiple requestar roles as well. So to show you the roles that we can define in terms of a requestar roles, so I'm just going to have this named as requestar role creation. And the options what I can perform over here, I can create accounts, I can choose a template while creating them, I can also ensure to add accounts to groups and also choose a group membership by removing them. So I think this should do, and what I shall do is I shall now have this saved. And once again, just like delegation, once you have this requestar role saved, you can simply assign it back to the requestar. So we already have the same roles being defined over here. And with that said, let me now sign out and choose to become a requestar. So I shall now sign out over here, get in with Sid, and now I shall, after providing the password, I'll now log in, and I'm going to show you how exactly I'll be raising a request and how is that ticket going to be raised into. So the only options what I have in terms of request is to perform a single user creation or choose to modify the group modifications. So let me talk about creating a single account over here. So let's say in case Sid is going to be one of your HR accounts over here, and he's going to go ahead and choose to create an account. So once I choose the template, of course all the information will be populated over here, or I don't even have to choose a template over here. Instead what I can do is I can just start providing the first name, and then I can go and provide in the last name over here. And if you notice again, with the help of this user creation template, all the attributes have been completely populated, like the group membership, the password profile, the account properties, and so on. But let's say for instance, I need to add a few groups over here. I go ahead and add the administrators, and I click on OK, and I'll have this request created. Sorry about that. So I will now provide the subject to. So now that you know I have defined the priority of this request, which is going to be high, and now that I've also chosen the other properties, as in to modify the group membership or to modify the contact attributes, wherein I can choose to define the street or address organization attributes or the managers over here. So after providing all this information, once I click on create request over here, it isn't creating the account, but instead this is going to raise as a ticket. Now you might wonder, where exactly is this ticket going to be stored? So once I receive a notification, yep, you heard it right, notification, yes. The workflow over here will also help you to define notification rules as well. Now we will cover that shortly as well. So what happens over here is once the request has been raised, you will find that request under the all requests pane. So once, let's say the HR has has received a notification that, hey, a Sid has, raised a ticket for user creation. So your review is quite important. So once the HR, gets into the ticket over here, so he can view the object and he can find out the changes, what is being done. So not just in HR, it could be any user account in your AD organization. So I find out, that, hey, the administrators is being added to a service desk account over here. So I can simply have that removed and I can choose in the necessary group that should be added over here. And what I would do is click on OK again. And then we shall have this reviewed. So my review is now being done. So after this, now once the review has been, the request has been reviewed, this will now get back as another ticket to the administrator, that is to the executor over here. So once the executor receives a request that, hey, the request has been raised and reviewed, you will find that again, you will find that request over here under the all request waiting for the execution or the rejection. So you can go back to the ticket again. Again, that's the whole point, of having the reviewer. So you can go with the reviewer status, or being the executor, that is being final authority over here, you can just go and check in the necessary groups or the necessary attributes that have been populated. And for instance, let's say you find a group that should not be added, let's say account operators, you shall go back. Let's say you need to remove this and you will click on OK. And now you've got the final call, whether you want to have this request executed or probably have that rejected. So you can just provide a comment and then click on OK. So once again, the reviewer and the requester will receive notification on the status of the ticket. So coming to that, of course, no workflow is complete without the notification rules, and of course, assigning the rules as well. So we get into notification rules, and over here we can define what email has to be sent when the request is being created, reviewed, or executed or rejected. So you can go and notify the necessary technicians or just the requester and the reviewer. You might also wonder that, hey, is it possible to add, let's say like a service desk account over here, so that, whenever a request like a user creation or any other important AD task is being raised, that should go, towards a specific DL or, or to any other email address. Absolutely, yes. You can just provide that additional email over here. So for instance, it's going to be service desk _UK at thedomain.com. So anytime a request has been raised, it will also be notified to this service desk -UK deal group as well. So which means technician who access that group will have the convenience to read the ticket and decide whether to go for it or not. So that way you can definitely do that, especially for equipment racing and so on. And in case if the request is being reviewed, you can have that notified to your other superiors too. And of course, if it's being executed, you can similarly define to choose which technicians that notification has to be notified to. And you can also define to customize the email as well. So here you go. We can provide the action title, which means the user creation request has been executed, or SID request for user creation has been executed by the administrator. As simple as that, because we've got the option to give you multiple macros. So those are the notification rules. Now, coming shortly over here, you also have an option where you can define certain rules in terms of assigning the ticket as well. What we have defined over here is just simple notifications. But with the help of assigning rules, I can go ahead and define which request should go for which department. So let's make it quite simple over here. You've got multiple departments on a specific level. So for instance, the administrative itself, will have different groups like finance or HR or the accounts over here. And let's say anytime, if one of your managers is being chosen to be a requestar and your manager is going to raise a ticket, let's say, add a user to a group or remove a user to a group, you can ensure that ticket over here should be assigned to the respective technician or to the respective manager. So for instance, let's make it HR to the manager, or let's make it manager over here to even more convenient for you, manager to the administrator of a specific location. So what would this do is that it's going to check out the department name, and over here I just want only the IT or the quality assurance over here. So anytime a requestor from the quality assurance is raising a ticket, that ticket over here should be assigned to the necessary executors. For example, it's going to be the admin over here, and the priority can also be defined too. Similarly, you can define multiple requests. So for instance, in case of the HR is creating a request to create accounts, that request should only go to one of your admins and not to every one of them. So let's say the action is going to be creating accounts over here, and also the options to add users to a group or remove them from group. I can have all these options selected, and then I can have this specific action assigned to the necessary technicians over here. And of course, in case the request is being reviewed, I can assign another rule for that too. This is the part where I can go ahead and define the necessary actions using the workflow module. So this is how you can go and assign and discuss the various rules what you can play with the workflow module over here. So just to perform a quick recap on the tasks what we have done today, we went straight with AD delegation, where we had defined how you can customize your role and have that associated technician, and we also learned how you can define to ensure that technician over here should be delegated only to certain OUs, where we can define this field over here. And you can also define which template should be chosen when an account is trying to perform a user creation. You can also ensure that which groups over here should be defined when the technician is about to perform a modification as well. And of course, the highlight over here is the impersonation as an admin, which ensures that in case if the account is not as permission, it would reflect to the account which is configured in domain settings, but ensuring that the permissions which is being reflected over here will not be reflected in Active Directory. They are all within the product. And to find out what actions have been done by the technician, you can find them under the audit reports over here. So it's going to show you the actions and the tasks that have been created by the helpdesk technicians. And a quick report as well, you can also find out what changes were being made to the helpdesk technicians by the super admins. So for instance over here, the ADManager Plus default admin technician had performed a modification, and if you notice, I had added the create users and I had removed a specific role. So that's how neatly defined are the custom reports, what you can see under the admin audit reports. And the second agenda was the business workflow, where we had defined how easy it is to customize the level of execution in your AD organization by choosing multiple roles for tickets. So it's more of a service desk solution over here where you can define, which ticket should be raised to which department, which ticket should be assigned when which user is creating one, and the other notification rules as well in case if the ticket is being in case if the task has been created or if the task has been executed or rejected, you can customize the email format as so. So once again, I want to thank you so much again for joining in today's workshop. If you do have any queries or if you do have any suggestions that you would like to view in the upcoming workshop series, I would definitely request you to drop us an email or provide that in the feedback form so that we can have that incorporated in the upcoming workshops. Once again, thank you so much for being an amazing audience as always. We look to see you forward in the upcoming workshop sessions again. Once again, hope this was informative. Thank you and have a great day.